I want to begin by thanking the OU for working with us at YUCJF on this important program, convening our resources together to make Tisha B'Av a more meaningful experience is an act of cooperation which benefits our community. In February of 1999, the New York Times carried an obituary on Mario Zucchini. Mario Zucchini was a human cannonball. For more than 30 years, he was shot out of a cannon more than 3 times a day to the fanfare of a circus band. And as he died of old age, he was known for one famous saying, quoted in the New York Times, that flying and the journey isn't the hard part, but landing in the net, the destination, is all that counts. There are 2 laws that seem to be totally disconnected and irrelevant to Tisha B'Av, but upon further reflection are the key to understanding the purpose of this day. 2 laws that seem to be disjointed, but upon deeper analysis are very much connected. Law number 1 is etched within the cycle of Torah readings is the fact that various parshiot, various Torah sections, must be read at specific times of year. And if necessary to achieve this goal, we combine parshiot, we combine Torah portions. So for example, there is the tradition that the tochacha, the chastisements found in the book of Vayikra, are read right before the holiday of Shavuot. And there is the tradition that the chastisements that are found in the book of Devarim are read right before Rosh Hashanah. Another example of this paradigm is that prior to the month of Av, or indeed inaugurating the month of Av, we have the tradition to recite the Parsha of Maseh that speaks about the journeys of the Jewish people. In fact, this year, in order to achieve that goal, we combined the Parsha of Maseh, focused on the journeys of the Jewish people in the desert, with Parshat Matot. The Balei Kabbalah, the rabbinic mystical community, explains that there is a specific reason for this custom, because the secret to our personal and communal redemption, the anecdote to Tisha B'Av, is found in the messages of Parshat Maseh, the journeys of the Jewish people in the desert. It's interesting. The book of Maseh that focuses on our journeys is a challenging section of the Torah. In fact, Maimonides, the Rambam, spends an entire chapter in his Guide to Perplex to explain why these journeys are even necessary to mention in the Torah. He tries to explain why these journeys aren't simply extraneous. Nachmanides, Ramban, after searching for reasons why these journeys need to be listed, says, Inyan lo nitgale lanu sodo. We simply do not understand the reasons why these journeys need to be mentioned. Yet the Kabbalists tell us that the recipe for our redemption can be found in these journeys. What relevance do these journeys have to Tisha B'Av, and how do they help us with community redemption? A second law. In the minor tractate of Masechet Sofrim, we are told the following. Avol b'shitim natnu tam. There is a reason why there needs to be a certain amount of lines on every column of a Torah scroll. There needs to be a minimal amount of lines equal k'masaot, equal to the journeys of the Jewish people in the desert, arba'im v'shnayim, equal to 42. This idea that is highlighted in the minor tractate of Masechet Sofrim is a wonderful message. After all, if Torah is to be our guidebook, it needs to celebrate the idea that life is about the journeys we take. Every column of a Torah parchment scroll must have at least 42 lines to highlight this idea. Because in life, what is important is the journey and not the destination. But along comes Maimonides and states the following. Yesh devarim acherim shelo nemru b'gamara. There are some things that we do not find in the Talmud. The nagu behem sofrim. It is the tradition amongst the scribes. The Kabbalah hu biyadam ish mi pi ish. It's a tradition that has been passed on from generation to generation without any breakage whatsoever. V'heim shiyu minyan hashitim shebechol daf v'daf, and that is the minimal amount of lines in every column of a Torah scroll has to be lo pachut mishmona v'arba'im, has to be no less than 48. Maimonides seems to deviate from the direct law stated in the tractate of Masechet Sofrim and decides it's not 42 lines, but rather 48. Let's try to connect these two laws. Law number one, the law that says that we have to read about the journeys of our people in the desert before we commemorate our losses on Tisha B'Av. And law number two, the difference of opinion regarding the minimal amount of lines of every column of a Torah scroll. For Maimonides, every piece of Torah parchment must not only focus on the 42 progressions that the Jewish people traveled as they journeyed from Egypt to Israel, but for Maimonides, every piece of parchment must also highlight the 6 occasions in the desert in which the Jewish people didn't travel forward, but the Jewish people retreated. You see, after the death of Aaron, there was a terrible strain in the Jewish people, and the Jewish people retreated from traveling to Israel, revisiting 6 of their previous encampments. For Maimonides, there's a deeper message behind every single column of the Torah scroll. Because if life is about the journeys, it's not just about the journeys in which we march forward, but also sometimes the journeys in which we take a step back. Sometimes we have to have the humility to reevaluate our journeys, to learn from our challenges, to revisit our decisions, and from stepping back, we also are able to grow. For Maimonides, the Torah is there to calibrate the journeys of our life, and therefore we must reflect not only on the 42 times in which we marched forward, but the 6 times in which the Jews retreated. We all know, as individuals and as community members, that often we journey to seize the initiatives, to conquer the world around us, but sometimes we have to learn how to renounce, how to invite defeat, and then to learn, even from the defeat, how to resume on that march of personal victory, of personal success, and of community accomplishment. So many times the journey is about us moving forward, but so many times it's also about taking a step back, reflecting upon the difficult times, having the capacity to recalibrate, to reassess, to re-energize, and to reinvent ourselves without surrendering to a recession of spirit. Perhaps on the Shabbos of welcoming in the month of Av, or on the first week of the month of Av, we have to read Parshat Maseh, because a prerequisite for us bringing in the Messiah must be to understand the hidden power behind the journey, the power to appreciate the holiness of our march. It is the keynote that tell us that even though some of these events happened thousands of years ago, we have to have the capacity to revisit the darkest moments of Jewish history and to realize our responsibility, our journey, that our existential existence, our ability to live as Jews, is predicated on so many that gave up their lives to ensure our capacity to march forward as a people, to appreciate the selfless sacrifice of those who had no choice but to guarantee the immortality of our people and the eternality of our covenantal relationship by offering up their lives al Kiddush Hashem. That's why the first half a day of Tisha B'Av, the night of Tisha B'Av, until Chatzot, until midday, we act as mourners, people of reflection. Eicha, how could this have happened? What are we to learn about this in our journey forward? And the second half a day, we rise from being mourners. Men don tefillin and talit. We all, as a community, recite a Torah portion that speaks of renewal, because we must learn from Tisha B'Av, we must learn from the experiences, re-engage with God, and march forward. It's interesting. The word for golah, the Hebrew word golah, which means diaspora, and the Hebrew word for redemption, ge'ulah, are separated only, there's only one phonetic difference between them, and that is one letter, the aleph. Because the difference between living as an individual and as a community in a diaspora state, in an exile state, or a redemptive state is just that one letter, aleph, ani. What role am I playing within the process? You know, Rabbi Soloveitchik was very fond of saying that if you want to understand any Hebrew word, the best way to understand the secret behind a Hebrew word is to look at the first time it appears in the Torah. The word echa, spelled Aleph Yud Chaf Hey, the first time it appears in the Torah, it is pronounced as Ayeka in Bereshit, where God asks Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, where are you? Where have you been? And if we, on Tisha B'Av, are going to ask ourselves the true question of Eicha, of how did this happen, what we really need to ask ourselves is Ayeka. Where are we? What is our journey about? Are we moving forward? And when we take a step back, do we also learn from that movement? What is my personal journey about? What is important? And how does it empower the Jewish people and society? You see, it might be for Mario Zucchini, a human cannibal. What might be important for him is not the journey, but simply the destination of finding the net. But for the human and for the Jewish spirit, what counts is not the destination. What counts is our commitment to the journey. It is why our rabbis tell us that any generation that is not involved in the rebuilding of the temple is responsible for its destruction. Because we as individuals and as a community need to ask ourselves the question, Ayeka, what is our journey about? And what are we doing to make sure that next year we come together as a community to celebrate our complete freedom as a people and as a society in engaging in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and ensuring that we live purposeful and meaningful lives. Have a meaningful fast.